Oh no! What time is it? It's Tuesday morning, and I still haven't finished my college English project. What am I gonna do? I got it! I'll call my good friend, beloved actor and retired wrestler, Lawrence Turode. Hello, Lawrence? Do you know anything about William Shakespeare? William Shakespeare was born on April 23rd, 1564. His birthplace was Stratford-upon-Avon, in Warwickshire, England. William Shakespeare was the first child of his parents to actually survive infancy, and during his upbringing, he studied Latin grammar. In 1582, Shakespeare, who was only 18 years old, married Anne Hathaway, who was 26. The two of them had 3 children, Susanna, Hamnet, and Judith. After this, it's kind of unclear what Shakespeare actually did, but my favorite theory was that he fled Stratford after he was prosecuted for stealing deer. From 1589 to 1594, Shakespeare wrote numerous plays, including Henry VI, Comedy of Errors, Titus Andronicus, and Richard III. He also dedicated several poems to the Earl of Southampton, plus over 100 sonnets. After that, Shakespeare joined the Lord Chamberlain's Men in 1594 as a writer, actor, and shareholder. During this time, Shakespeare wrote some of his most well-known plays, including the one we'll all soon get to know and love, Hamlet. When King James I came to power in 1603, the Lord Chamberlain's Men were changed into the King's Men. At this time, Shakespeare began writing his most famous and controversial tragedies, one of which was Macbeth, and the other was Othello, which will be covered in this very video. Othello was written in 1604, but it wasn't published until 1623, when a pair of actors from the King's Men gathered Shakespeare's work into the first folio. This 5-act work is often regarded as one of Shakespeare's best tragedies due to its distinct lack of humor and comic relief. The play itself gets its plot from an Italian work called Degli Hecatomithi by Giambattista Giraldi, and if anyone can pronounce either of those things, please let me know. In the scene I will perform for you, the villain Iago sows the seeds of suspicion in the titular Othello, and through lies, deceit, and trickery, convinces him to distrust his wife, Desdemona, and his lieutenant, Cassio. There are quite a few characters to worry about in this play, so I'll give you the fast version. Iago, a greedy, cunning, and sarcastic bird, voiced by Gilbert Gottfried, who works as Jafar's partner in crime to overthrow the Sultan. Iago, a greedy, cunning, and mendacious man who feels betrayed by Othello because he hired someone else, and now he wants to destroy Othello and everything he loves. Also, he's racist and sexist. Note, if you're a major character in Othello and you haven't been screwed over by Iago yet, you'll be in big trouble when Act 4 hits. Michael Cassio. I really identify with this character. He's a knowledgeable, studious fellow with no wartime experience, yet Othello thinks he's better than a guy who's actually fought battles and won. He's also unattractive and a little pansy. Wait a minute, who changed the script? Desdemona, a beautiful young woman who gets married way too young to the first guy she meets. Her father opposes his daughter's eloping, but that's just because he's a helicopter parent with abandonment issues. Othello, a black general who married a white woman, Desdemona, and decided to reject Iago as his lieutenant in favor of Cassio, which literally caused this whole godforsaken mess in the first place. Way to go, Othello. That's all. Now for the play. After Othello arrives at Cyprus to report for duty, he and his companions begin to celebrate the recent victory off the shores of the country. The enemy all died in a storm. Meanwhile, Iago begins his insidious plans and sends one of his lackeys to start a fight with Cassio in order to soil his reputation. Later that night, Iago's plan springs into action. Cassio, in a drunken rage, attacks Iago's lackey, and Othello rightfully forces Cassio to step down as lieutenant. Upset and desperate, Cassio makes the biggest mistake of his life. He gets advice from Iago. Of course, Iago takes advantage of Cassio and convinces him to have a little chat with Desdemona to get his job back. This plays right into Iago's hands, who then, extremely subtly, hints to Othello that maybe, we're gonna get a little PG-13 here, Desdemona and Cassio are scootily pooping. Now, on to the main event! I will be performing an excerpt from Act 3, Scene 3 of Othello, in which Iago plants distrust into Othello's mind. The part of Iago will be played by me, Jacob Franzmeier, and the part of Othello will be played by beloved actor and retired wrestler Lawrence Turode.
My noble lord. What dost thou say, Iago? Did Michael Cassio, when you wooed my lady, know of your love? He did, from first to last. Why dost thou ask? But for a satisfaction of my thought, no further harm. Why thy thought, Iago? I did not think he had been acquainted with her. Oh yes, and went between us very oft. Indeed? Indeed, indeed. Discernst thou aught in that? What dost thou think? Think, my lord? Think, my lord? Alas, thou echoes me, as if there were some monster in thy thought, too hideous to be shown. Thou dost mean something. I heard thee say even now thou lackst not, that when Cassio left my wife, what didst not lack? And when I told thee, he was of my counsel, of my whole course I will when thou criest, indeed? If thou dost love me, show me thy thought. For Michael Cassio, I dare be sworn, I think that he is honest. Nay, there's more in this. I prithee speak to me as to thy thinkings, as thou dost ruminate, and give thy worst of thoughts the worst of words. Good my lord, pardon me. Though I am bound to every act of duty, I am not bound to that all slaves are free to. Utter my thoughts? Why, say they are vile and false, as wears that palace, whereinto foul things sometimes intrude not. What dost thou mean? Good name in man and woman, dear my lord, is the immediate jewel of their souls. Who steals my purse steals trash, 'tis something, nothing. But he who filches from me my good name robs me of that which does not enrich him, but makes me poorer instead. I'll know thy thoughts! Oh, beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster which doth mock the meat it feeds on. That cuckold lives in bliss, who, certain of his fate, loves not his wronger. But oh, what damned minutes tells he are, who dotes, yet doubts, suspects, yet soundly loves. Why? Why is this? Think'st thou I'd make a life of jealousy, to follow still the changes of the moon with fresh suspicions? No! 'Tis not to make me jealous, to say my wife is fair, feeds well, loves company, is free of speech, sings, plays, and dances. No, Iago! I'll see before I doubt, when I doubt, prove! And on the proof there is no more but this, away at once with love or jealousy! I am glad of this, for now I shall have reason to show the love and duty that I bear you with franker spirit. I speak not yet of proof. Look to your wife. Observe her well with Cassio. Keep your eyes thus, not jealous, nor secure. I know our country disposition well. In Venice they do let God see the pranks they dare not show their husbands. Their best conscience is not to leave 't undone, but to keep 't unknown.
This scene is only the first step in Iago's plan. By the end of Act 3, Iago manages to deceive Othello for his own mischievous purposes. Through a series of intricate lies and the clever placement of a certain general's wife's handkerchief, Iago proceeds to completely convince Othello that his wife and Cassio are adulterous, without any real evidence. He pits Othello against his wife and Cassio by feeding him misinformation and orchestrating conflict. Finally, in a culmination of everything that has yet happened, Iago sets up an ambush and attacks Cassio, injuring him to near death. Meanwhile, Othello, in his anger, goes to Desdemona's bedroom and strangles her in her bed. After he commits this vile deed, Iago's wife reveals to him the trickery of Iago, and after finally arresting the villain, Othello stabs himself and dies. This scene is smack in the middle of the whole play, and it really does mark the turning point in the themes of the work as a whole. This scene demonstrates Iago's inherent evil and disloyalty. As Thomas Reimer's A Short View of Tragedy suggests, Iago blatantly disregards fact in favor of circumstance, and his Machiavellian words are nothing more than a simple ploy to deceive his superior. This is only strengthened by Samuel Taylor Coleridge's comments on the play. Iago's passionless character, Therefore a bold partisan here of a truth, but yet of a truth converted into falsehood. Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He states that the true tragedy of this play is that we, as the audience, already know of Iago's duplicative ways. A major theme, as explained by Maynard Mack in his analytical work The Jacobean Shakespeare, is that of voice. This scene shows the voice differences in Iago's deceptive character and his actual emotion. In this scene, Iago, seemingly innocent to Othello, disguises his true intentions by playing the role of concerned comrade. He supposedly avoids speaking his mind because he apparently cares too much about Othello's well-being. We know this is not true, of course, because, as A.C. Bradley of Shakespeare for Students attests, Iago is one of the most deceptive employers of intrigue in any Shakespearean play. One of the most interesting themes of this play is the opposition of love and intellect. As Robert B. Heilman tells in Wit and Witchcraft, the bonds of love shared by Othello and his wife are powerful enough to join two people of vastly different places and races. However, the villain is perfectly content to use every ounce of his wit and cunning to contrive an ingenious scheme to demolish that magical relationship, all for his own vengeful purposes. This scene is only the first to enact this underhanded design, despite the ever-present love that broke the barriers of society to begin with. Othello was written at the height of Shakespeare's career, so it's no question why it's considered one of his best works. As A.C. Bradley suggests, this play conveys more visceral emotion than Macbeth and Hamlet alike, and though it is not as well received as either of those works, it is still a top contender for the best of Shakespeare's plays. In my own opinion, Othello really is one of Shakespeare's best. The unparalleled villainy of Iago beats out any character in Macbeth, and the stark contrast of love and hatred makes Romeo and Juliet look like a young adult vampire romance novel. However, Othello barely holds a candle to King Lear, mostly because in that play everyone either dies or goes insane, or both. Anyway, I guess what I'm really trying to say is, I pity the fool who won't read Othello.